Good morning everyone and welcome to the webinar. Today's webinar is about the importance of eye contact when presenting and training. As speakers, as trainers, as facilitators, we need to be aware that our eye contact is having an impact on how people interpret us. Our eye contact enables us to be more effective, more alert, and read our audience better as well. So I'm going to give you some high-level tips around eye contact and just some basic refreshers on what you should do in terms of your eye contact and how you can use eye contact to help engage and build rapport with your audience. I think most of you have done webinars before with me, looking at the names, but just to refresh, please ask questions as we go. Please ask questions after the webinar. It's a half-hour webinar, and it may be in hindsight you have some questions. Take notes as we go and think and apply to your own circumstance. Have you got a video recording of yourself presenting? What do you do with your eye contact? What do other people say about your eye contact after you've run a meeting or after you've delivered a seminar? So apply and think about how you can use this particular information. So my call to action for today is, I guess it's about raising your awareness. Your eye contact does matter. Those of you who know the non-verbal communication or the circle of having impact on people, is about 57% is in your non-verbal communication, about 33% is in your voice, and about 10% in the words. And of course, a large part of that non-verbal is your eye contact. So let me start with my philosophy on eye contact. It's really quite simple, and it's that my lips, my mouth does not move unless I'm looking at someone within the audience. So I try to have one-on-one conversations with everyone in the room, one at a time. So if you have a bigger room with 50 people, with 100 people, I'm still doing one-on-one conversations, and it's the eye contact that lets that person know I'm having a chat with them for 2 or 3 seconds. Then I'll move to somewhere else and have a chat for 2 or 3 seconds. Then I'll move to someone down the front. Now, if you're worried about bigger crowds, 100 people, 150 people, and you can't make individual eye contact with everybody, do not worry about it. It's about picking random people in the room and dwelling on them for 2 or 3 seconds. The 5 to 10 people around that person think you're looking at them, then move to somewhere else. There's a couple of patterns that you can use. If you think about a training room, and one of them is a Z. So I'll make eye contact with someone down the front there. I'll make eye contact down with someone down the front there. Then I'll speak to this person for a couple of seconds, midway on the way back. Further towards the back, this person for a couple of seconds, this person for a couple of seconds, and I'll transfer my eyes to the back right-hand corner and spend there for a few seconds. And it's a random pattern. Then I can repeat the pattern, and I can start at the other side and start somewhere else, and I can do a reverse Z, or you can do an M. What I'm saying is the person sitting there, this is in a big room, speak to them. Speak to that person. Don't scan the room. Don't look above their heads. Speak to that person. And in a big room, the 5 people sitting around that individual, certainly down the back, not so much down the front, will think that you are speaking to them. And of course you can also use an X pattern if that suits you. Real eye contact, not tokenistic looking above their heads, one-on-one conversations. So when I move to the flip chart and I write on the flip chart with my back to the room, generally I don't speak. I like to see my audience. I like to let the audience know that I'm looking at them, I'm paying attention, and I'm having conversations. So that's my personal philosophy, that I like to only speak when I'm looking with someone in the room. Be careful, don't, with those X's or the M's or the Z's, don't do the pattern too so rhythmically or so mechanically that people can see that you're gradually moving down a line or across. It's got to be more random, but those patterns may help guide you. Your peripheral vision is really important. So as you're engaging one person and you're making eye contact, if you're talking and everyone else in the room glazes over or stops breathing, you've said something that's triggered that visceral response, everyone sits up and or people start to fall to sleep, your peripheral vision is what picks up what's happening. Juggling's a great way to increase your peripheral vision. So I sometimes tell people one of the best public speaking skills you can have is learn to juggle, because you can then improve your peripheral vision, which reads the health, the well-being, the attitude of the room, as well as having one-on-one conversations. Now let me show you something that's a little bit counterintuitive, but it's really quite valuable. If this is the crowd here, this is the front of the room, and I'm standing here presenting. If this person here asks me a question, I will move over here and position myself and take the question, as opposed to move here and take the question. Because if I do take the question here, my peripheral vision loses all of that part of the room. When I move to here, and I'm now looking at that person, but my peripheral vision picks up the whole room. So if this person asks a question, that's meant to be a question mark, and people over here shake their head from side to side, I now know that this question is not of interest to the rest of the room. And I can say to you, thanks for your question, Catherine. Thanks for your question, Anne. Thanks for your question, Steve. Let's have a chat about that at morning tea. Let me just do that again. This is the crowd here. I'm standing here. Person asks a question over here. I'm going to move to the other side. My peripheral vision is now picking up just about everything. And I'm going to look at that person. Yes. What's your question? Everybody in the room nods their head. In agreement, I'm going to deal with that question. That's the power of your peripheral vision. What about after lunch, the graveyard shift, when everyone's falling asleep? How do you know that it's time to do an activity? Get everyone to stand up, change pace. It's your peripheral vision that picks up. How can you do that if you're looking to the roof? Your eyes go up, or your eyes go to the floor as you gather your thoughts. You've just lost your audience, that ability to read what's happening. So that's one of the best skills a presenter, a facilitator can have when they're speaking, and that is the ability to engage or read the whole audience through their peripheral vision. Can I juggle? No, I can't. Have I tried to learn? Yes, I have. Is my peripheral vision any good? It's improving, and I find that even though I'm speaking, I'm watching things happening at the corner of my eye. I was in Bunbury recently presenting, and we had an urn, a hot water urn up the back of the room, and I was talking away, and I just noticed someone being distracted as the urn started to make that bubbling noise. And I was able to say, without missing a beat, feel free to turn that urn off for a while. Because one person was not able to concentrate. They probably were an auditory learner, and my peripheral vision picked up that distraction for that person, and we intervened. And then when morning tea came, the water was already hot. We just turned it back on. That's the power of your peripheral vision. The reason your eye contact is important is it's how you build that trust, that authenticity, that honesty. It's kind of the used car salesman phenomenon. Now, these are just random photos that I've grabbed. If this person here, and you're sitting here, is trying to sell you a used car and they won't look at you, are you going to trust them? Are you going to buy that car off them? If someone keeps looking to the roof, which is quite natural as you try to gather your thoughts, but you're asking the audience to adopt your way of thinking, to embrace a new policy, to embrace change, it's a really good thing to do as you don't look at your audience. So the eye contact and the one-on-ones that I spoke about, my philosophy is that my lips don't move, my mouth doesn't move unless I'm looking at someone. It's about building that rapport, that trust and that connection, and the honesty comes with eye contact. That doesn't mean you don't need to find your answers in the roof or on the floor, but if you can do that internally while maintaining eye contact, you're going to look more confident, more effective, more authentic. So be careful as you're gathering your thoughts. You may come across as a bit shifty, a bit of a shady character. It's about looking at people in the eyes, letting them see that you are genuine, you're authentic, you're passionate about your topic, you believe what you're saying. And you can see with some of our television interviews with politicians, you can almost see when they're lying or when they're uncomfortable with the question or when they're uncomfortable with what they've been asked to respond to, and sometimes they will avoid the response and they say, look, I don't want to comment on that. And their eyes become shifty as well. So this is how we build trust, rapport, honesty with our audiences. One exception for the eye contact, and it's important to understand your eye contact overrides your gestures. So remember I said my lips don't move, I don't talk unless I'm looking at someone. However, if I have a gesture, a directional gesture, and I want people to look at my gesture, my eyes must follow my own gesture. The lady here wants us to look at the watering can. Her hand's going up to the watering can. Her eyes need to go to the watering can. This person here is talking about some data on the chart. His eyes are looking at the people. And you notice that everyone's looking at him. They're not looking at the chart. If this gentleman wants them to look at the data, then he needs to move his eyes that way because his eyes are trumping, his eyes are overriding his gesture. Classic example. Watch our weather presenters present the weather on Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10, ABC. When they point to the synoptic chart and they're looking down the barrel of TV cameras, engaging their audience, and then they're talking to the synoptic chart, there's a cyclone forming off the northwest of West Australia. Haydn's got a overnight minimum of -2. Their eyes will go to where they want you to look. So they'll point to the chart and they'll transfer their eyes to the direction of their hand. If they don't, if they look gun barrel straight at you, you're not going to follow their gesture. So on these circumstances, you need to talk and look away from the audience as you're describing the cyclone forming off, as you're describing, as this gentleman is, the trend in growth or the downturn in growth or whatever he's talking about. His eyes should go to that chart and he can keep talking to that chart because he wants you to go there visually. So I just want you to remember that wherever your eyes go is a stronger pull than where your hands or your non-verbal gestures go. Eye contact trumps your gestures. All right. I want to talk about 2.3 three-point communication, and this is eye contact, and you can use this in a group facilitation presenting, and you can also use this one-on-one on a performance discussion, giving bad news, praising someone. So let me start off with what I'll call one-point communication. So one-point communication is kind of when you point to yourself and your eyes may glaze over and you're talking about yourself. So I'm really find public speaking important. It's my passion. I love public speaking. Now, if I want to talk to you, my eyes will go to you. I love helping you to overcome your fear of public speaking. I love to help you to become more effective and more confident. I don't want you to be a nice speaker and not have the impact. So my eyes are now on you, and we're having two-point communication. So that's 1 point, and that's 2 point. 3 point is when we go to a third object. So 3 point is when we take our eyes somewhere else. So this is what 3 point looks like. First point, once again, I'm kind of looking inwardly at myself. Second point, I'm making eye contact with you as we sit across the meeting room, as you're in the training room with me. Third point is an object, a report, a record, a piece of paper, pathology report if I'm a doctor, a flip chart, a whiteboard. So where the gentleman was looking at us, that was 2 point communication, but his hand was pointing to a third point, which was the flip chart. And we would be looking at him. 2 point communication is really good when you give positive information. The third point, or 3 point communication, is really good when you give something negative. And what you're doing is you're taking the person's eyes away from you to the report, to the offending report, to the flip chart that shows productivity is down. So I just want you to imagine this. I'm going to start with you guys. You're in the room. We're going to do 2 point. So thanks everyone for coming. It's really good to have you all here at this weekly team meeting. I'm now going to look at and point to a flip chart. One of the things I've noticed, so I'm not looking at you anymore, one of the things I've noticed is our productivity's gone down 5% over the last 2 weeks. Now I'm going to make eye contact again. I know as a team that we're really passionate about our work and our productivity. I'm now going to look at the flip chart in a moment. So what are we going to do? And then I'm going to turn and point to the flip chart. What are we going to do about that? The flip chart is the problem, not you guys. So by taking something negative to a third point, I'm allowing you to keep breathing. I'm not saying, guys, you're the problem. How come you've let productivity go down? I'm doing 2 point now. I'm looking straight down the barrel at you. I notice productivity's gone down 5% over the last 2 weeks. It's almost like I'm accusing you in the room of being the result of it. So doctors are taught to take the x-ray or the pathology where there's something wrong off to the side and point to it. Here's your fracture. Here's the shadow. Here's the high white cell count. Then they come back. So my role is to work with you and to help you get really well and deal with, and then they'll move to the side to deal with this issue here. So take the negative to a third point. That's the advantage of 2 point versus 3 point. It preserves the sanity of the relationship. It enables the second person to keep breathing when you show them what you're talking about, your attendance record, your absenteeism, the number of sick days. Chapter 3 of your report is not complete. Where? Show me, show me. That's what third point communication does. So as a rule, positive, good information, 2 point. If it's negative or unexpected, take it to a third point and go visual, but have something there. Put it on a flip chart, put it on a whiteboard, or have a report or a piece of paper that indicates what the problem is. And of course, you can even go bigger than that. You can take it to what we call a fourth point. But before we do that, a question. And this will see if you're in the virtual training room out there, if you're awake or asleep. Is this gentleman delivering good news, or is he delivering bad news? If he's following the model that I just shared with you, would he be delivering good news or bad news? First of all, what sort of communication is he doing? Yes, he's looking at us straight down the barrel, so it's 2 point. So therefore, that chart, that data, that business plan, that must be good news. Yep. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Steve. That's good news. So now our eyes are towards him. We're keeping breathing. He's saying, thanks, good. That's a really good result. If his eyes turn to the chart and he said, look, I noticed productivity's just dropped off a little bit, that would be 3 point, and that's a better way of delivering bad news. All right. So the other one is 4 point. And all that 4 point is when you take it outside the room. So first point is you. Second point is eye contact with the person or the group. Third point, flip chart, report, pathology, x-ray. Fourth point is outside the room. And you would turn your eyes and look outside the window, or metaphorically outside the wall. Out there, the community is saying that Rio Tinto is not an environmentally friendly organisation and that we're destroying the environment within the Pilbara. Then I'm going to come back and make 2 point conversation. You and I know that's not true. And what are we going to do to address those community concerns? So I'm going to move to the 4th point, out there. So just some high-level eye contact things you can do to build rapport, use it for positive or negative, and take it out of the room when everyone in the room is affected by what's happening outside the room. I'm going to pause for a moment. Are there any questions on 2.3 point communication? Fairly clear. Were you aware of 2.3 point communication? Okay. It's good. Try it. It's good to practice. So when you sit across the desk with someone in doing a performance discussion, maybe start with a colleague so it's not a real performance discussion. Give them some bad news and just take it to a bit of paper, take it to a report. And then make eye contact, say, so what I want to do is I want to help you address, and then go to the 3rd point, that issue. All right. Moving on. Q&A. Another thing where you can use your eye contact, and you've probably seen this whole table before, this is about credibility and approachability. Sometimes in a presentation, you want to be approachable. Generally, when you start, good morning, everyone, my name's Peter. It's a pleasure to be here. You want me to be approachable. But as I go on to the content and I start to share the lessons or the rationale behind my proposed change, you want me to become credible. As well as palms up, which is approachable, and palms facing down, which is more credible. The voice changes. The frozen eye versus the blinking helps you appear more credible. Danny Green had a boxing fight yesterday. You know when they do the press conference and they stand almost nose to nose, toe to toe, the first boxer who blinks loses. So they do that frozen eye. It's about credibility, it's about strength, it's about believability. Julie Bishop does really good frozen eye contact when she deals with difficult content, with difficult matters. But I've also seen Julie Bishop talking about the hardest thing she's ever done, which was to ring up the families who lost their loved ones on that Malaysian airline flight that got shot down over the Ukraine. And she spoke about it, and she blinked. Her voice was softer. She was being approachable. She wasn't trying to tell us anything. She wasn't trying to warn us of any risks. She was just approachable. If you want to be approachable and if you want to be seen as credible, make sure that your eyes are frozen for credible and a little bit of blinking for approachable. The verticality of your eye contact. Now, this is your audience. What are you going to do with your audience? If I gesture high, so I put my hand up into the air, or I go to a whiteboard and write something across the whiteboard, and your eyes go up. I can also gesture down, so I can take my hands from around my face and pull them into my belly button. That's what I call a low gesture. There's a reason for doing that. When you take people's eyes up, such as this lady in my audience, she's thinking, she's analysing, and she's considering. So I want you to imagine how effective you can be if you have that rapport and that connection with your audience. Imagine how you'll be able to change your audience. This gentleman is the speaker and he's gesturing low. If that didn't work, imagine how that would feel. So I'm now taking you into your feeling, your experience, your emotion. Trauma counsellors who are debriefing someone that's been traumatised, maybe a bank hold-up, will often go to a whiteboard and stand up and say, can you describe to me what happened? So the person, the victim, will go through the analytical. So it was 9:35 a.m. The person walked in and said this and said that. If a counsellor makes the mistake and says, can you tell me what happened, and gestures like this gentleman, unfortunately they're taking the person back into their feelings and the persons will relive that trauma. So to prevent the reliving of the trauma, they will go high with their gesture. They will go to a whiteboard and capture it. So the person just needs to think and analyse what happened, not feel the emotion or relive the experience. Later on, when they've moved on in the counselling and they've put safety measures in place and they're going to do a return to work program and everything's as per the victim's expectations, if we put all this in place, how do you feel about going back to work? Yeah, I'm feeling a bit better now. So there's times to go high and there's times to go low. I did mention some high-level opportunities for using your eye contact. Moving on quickly, keep your audience's eyes moving in the socket, so you need to use the stage. People fall asleep on straight roads. PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint, is putting your audience to sleep. So you as a speaker need to use both sides of the platform and keep people's eyes moving in their sockets. People don't fall asleep when they're driving around S-bends, figure eights, sharp curves. People fall asleep on straight roads. PowerPoint is a straight road. So please bring your PowerPoint slide down. Move to the left of the room and stay there for a while. Gesture high, gesture low, purposefully. Go to the flip chart and get people to move their eyes to the flip chart. This is how you keep people driving on an S-bend and a figure eight and they don't fall asleep. Any last questions? Feel free to type them in. You know I always promote my upcoming workshops. I've got a lot in Perth and a couple in Brisbane towards the end of the year. You know you can get those on my website any stage you want to. Next webinar, platform. And I've kind of touched on the platform. By moving to the left for a while and then moving to the right for a while, you're actually moving people's eyes in their sockets. This gentleman here is standing behind the lectern and hanging on to the lectern. This is not a good use of the platform. So that's available for you on the 15th if you're interested, midday to 12:30 Perth time. Once again, if it's the time's not convenient for you, register and then ask me to send you the recording. All right. Are there any last questions before we move on? Any last questions? It's just gone 9:30.